This is by Saida, who says, "Can you tell us the truth about the 1946 naval mutiny?" That's an interesting question. Thus far, I have been taking questions about more ancient Indian history. This is more recent Indian history, but it's a very important uh, chapter in the pre-independence history of India. It's something that actually triggered off the independence of India. It hastened India's independence. So here's what happened. Uh, the UK, along with its allies, went to war in 1938, 39, 39, I think it is. Yes, the Second World War. And a significant number of the British troops were actually Indian troops. More than 2.5 million Indian troops fought in the Second World War on behalf of the British. That's 25 lakhs, more than 25 lakhs. It's an enormous number. So this war went on for several years. It ended in 1945 with the defeat of the Japanese. The Germans were defeated in Europe, and after a few months later, the Japanese were defeated in 1945 with the twin atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So that brought the Second World War to an end. And this war basically crippled the United Kingdom economically. So it became very difficult for that country to hold on to its overseas possessions, including India, especially when India had been already sucked dry of all its wealth. There was nothing left for India to give to the UK. All of the Indian wealth had already been taken over. So the British basically began slowly disbanding the Indian armed forces, right? There was a process of demobilization, which means that soldiers and sailors, etc., were released from service. Now, this process took a very long time. It was a slow bureaucratic process. Now, we had this big, quite significant, sizable Indian Navy, the Royal Indian Navy, RIN, which had ports, which was based in several ports: Karachi, Mumbai, Vishakhapatnam, Madras, Kolkata, in the Andamans as well, even in the Middle East, even in Singapore and places like Indonesia, etc. So it was a very well spread out naval force. Now, what happened was that this process of demobilization was going on, and all these sailors who had fought for the British in various parts of the world, they were basically put on shore leave, and they were basically just kept idle, and they were basically waiting. They were essentially waiting to be demobilized. So this process went on for a long time. The treatment was very bad. The wages were very low. The food was terrible. There was a great deal of racism and whatnot. And also at this time, what was happening was that the Indian National Army had captured the nation's imagination because of the way in which it fought the British in the Eastern Theater. The Battle of Kohima, the Battle of Imphal, the Burmese campaign. The Indian National Army, INA, Subhash Chandra Bose's army, did indeed lose at the end, but it captured the public's imagination, the nation's imagination, that yes, Indians can actually fight the British and make them bleed, right? Now, many of these Indian INA soldiers were captured and they were put on trial, etc. So there was a great deal of discontent. So this is the background to the 1946 naval revolt. So what happened was that in, I think, February 1946, in Bombay, now Mumbai, in Mumbai, this revolt was triggered off. A number of sailors went on strike. They began to refuse accepting or obeying orders from their British officers, etc. They started saluting with the left hand. They started painting graffiti on the walls, "Quit India," and things like that. And because of the ill treatment they were receiving from their British superiors, there was a great deal of racism. They were called sons of bitches and sons of coolies and junglies, and even worse things, black bastards and whatnot. These are some of the things. The food was terrible. The treatment was overall terrible. So these guys revolted. Initially, it was just a small number, 200, 300 of them who revolted. But very quickly, what happened is that this spread it went viral. The correct terminology is it went viral because these guys captured the communications infrastructure of the Royal Indian Navy. the wireless systems and all. And within a couple of days, this revolt had spread all over the Indian Navy, Royal Indian Navy. Karachi went on strike. Uh, Vishakhapatnam, Madras went on strike. The even in the Andamans, the Royal Indian Navy ships went basically revolted. They stopped obeying orders and all that. And within a few days, more than 70, almost 78 ships had revolted. Naval ships, warships had revolted against the British occupiers of India, and more than 20,000 sailors were involved in this. And not just the sailors, it was the population, the civilian population of Mumbai, of Karachi, that revolted against the British. The whole entire city of Mumbai, the entire city of Karachi went on strike. There were protests, there were demonstrations, trains were burned, property was damaged, Europeans were heckled and pushed and all that. It was becoming really dangerous for the Europeans. And all the Indian sailors had control of these naval ships with their powerful guns and weaponry. So this became a very dangerous situation. It Within a few days, if this had not been stopped, if this had not been contained, the Indian army would have also revolted. 25 lakh soldiers. Imagine what would have happened if the Indian army had joined this revolt, if they had come to know about this. The naval guys had the control of the wireless infrastructure, and also they were able to communicate with various ships and in far off locations in India. But this was not connected to the army network. That's why the army did not come to know about this. If they had known, this would have been a nationwide uprising on a scale greater than the 1857 war. And the British would have been wiped out in a bloody manner in 28 to 48 hours. There was no way they could have survived this sort of a revolution. Now, what happened was that these sailors, they took possession of the ships and all the infrastructure. They placed 3 flags on each ship: the Congress flag, the Muslim League flag, and the Communist flag. These were the 3 main political parties in India. So 3 flags: the Congress flag, the Muslim League flag, and the Communist flag. And this spread all across India, even in Karachi and various places. So and it had a great deal of popular support. So what the British did was that they ordered the police to quell the rioting and all that in the cities of Mumbai and Karachi. The police refused to cooperate. The police kind of joined the people in protesting against the British. This went beyond non-cooperation. This was becoming a violent insurrection. Then they had to bring in the Indian army, the British Indian army. And then there was a bloody massacre in the city of Mumbai. More than 200 people, official figures say that more than 200 civilians were killed and many thousands were injured. I would say that the unofficial, real figures would be many thousands must have been killed in this indiscriminate firing on unarmed civilian protesters. And the same sort of thing happened in Karachi also. It must have happened in other places too, but we're not sure. I mean, we don't have the records because these records were all British records, so we don't really know. But at least in Mumbai and Karachi, there was indiscriminate firing on Indians, unarmed Indians, and it caused hundreds of deaths. Now, the Congress party, under the leadership of Mr. Gandhi, condemned the uprising. They condemned the 1946 naval revolt against the British. The Muslim League also condemned the uprising of the Navy, of the Indian Naval Force, because at that time these 2 parties were in negotiations with the British for a proper ceremonial handing over of power. The British had made it clear that they wanted to leave India. They were no longer in a position to manage India. It was too difficult, too expensive. They were bankrupt basically because of the war. They wanted to leave India. And the Congress and the Muslim League were trying to negotiate and get the best deal possible. The Muslim League wanted a separate nation of Pakistan. The Congress wanted to hand over of power to themselves. And this revolution, if it happened, it would basically destroy their dreams. The partition would never have happened. The people of India would have captured independence by force instead of it being handed over on a platter on British terms. So this was a very dangerous moment for the Congress party and the Muslim League. Their dreams were on the verge of being shattered. So Mr. Gandhi condemned this uprising. Mr. Vallabhbhai Patel came to Bombay and he urged the rebels to step down, and he assured them, he gave them an assurance on behalf of the British that none of them would be persecuted for what they have done. Just please surrender, end this nonsense, and none of you will be persecuted. So these guys saw that there was no political support apart from the communists. Strangely enough, the communists in 46 supported this revolt, but the Congress Party and the Muslim League did not support it. They condemned it. So these guys, they found that there was no support from the main two political parties, and after they were given assurances by Mr. Patel, Mr. Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, that there would be no repercussions, no persecution, then they all surrendered. So it lasted about a week or 10 days or so at most. They surrendered to the British. The moment they surrendered, they were all arrested, imprisoned, and court martialed. So the word that they were given was immediately broken. They were told there would be no persecution, no victimization. They were persecuted. They were imprisoned for months, solitary confinement, terrible treatment. They were court martialed, and I don't know what else happened to them. After India got its so called independence, and Pakistan also became independent, these people who fought the British on behalf of India, they were not reinstated to their naval positions. They were not compensated for the ill treatment and the loss of salary and all that. And we don't even know what happened to them. So this is how India and also Pakistan treats its patriots. So this is basically what happened in 1946. It was a very dangerous moment for the British, for the Congress Party, and for the Muslim League. It was a spark of hope for India that we could grab independence on our own terms by kicking the British out. But the Congress Party and the Muslim League ensured that this did not happen. And but this incident, it taught the British a very valuable lesson. They realized that they could not hang on to India. It was imperative for them to quickly leave the country as quickly as possible, because otherwise there will be widespread slaughter, and every British man, woman, and child would be wiped out from the soil of India. That became very clear, and that's why there was this hasty process of the partition, of the redrawing of the boundaries of and all that. And about 15 months or so later, 15, 16 months later, we had the partition of India and the so-called independence of India and Pakistan. So this is the story of the 1946 naval mutiny. I would highly recommend you read about this, because this is something that very few people have written about. This is a chapter of history that has essentially, the historians have tried to bury it, because it kind of shows us the truth about what could really have happened, what was possible, and what the Congress and the Muslim League did for the sake of their personal benefit, because they wanted power to be handed to them instead of the people reclaiming the power which was theirs. So that's what happened.